Everybody watching. I'm just doing a little update video, mainly for myself too, to a little better accountability for the projects I'm working on. And these are a few years old actually. So you're starting with the oldest, the telescoping Yagi. Actually, underneath there's even older, going back to like 2016. That's my old when I was traveling more in the car. It probably even goes back to 2015. The first little solar power battery pack USB portable little charger that I'd use for backup for the cell phone to charge when I wasn't running the car. Actually, that goes back to when I had the truck, so before I had the car. So that is probably going back to maybe even 2014, but I'll go ahead and say 2015. And then kind of you can see here in the background, little adapter I made just bending some residential wire to use as a bridge for instead of using two 1.5 volt AAA cell batteries, to use one of those. Probably wasn't using a lithium. I know I have some lithium iron phosphate, but not as many as I do the lipos. So the 3.7 to 4.2 volt battery, so you just use a single one and bridge the one. Probably best to use the 3.4 lithium iron phosphate ones. Anyhow, I've got some updates here too. I've got this little, like, I recently just got this in, is UPS, basically uninterruptible power supply for two 18650 cell batteries. And this will run, say, like a solar panel. I won't use this one, but I can run some other solar panels I have, and run those to keep that basically always going. Compared to this over here is a single cell 18650, and that has a charger and an output. I think it's a selectable 3.3 or 5 volt output, which is a bummer. These little UPSs don't have down to 3.3 volts. So the plan was to use for the weather station. I've got a little weather station that's not pictured here that I've hacked into with, I forget what the modules are. They're either buck up or buck down modules. And I've got set up now with two 18650 batteries being bucked down to the input with seems like I've got, I think it's a TP4056 charging modules to charge the batteries, and I haven't done anything past that. And I kind of want to update so I have more of an uninterruptible power supply, where there's these other, and I'm not going to remember what those are either. They're a buck, I think they're a buck, I don't think they're a boost, but they're a constant current and constant voltage design, and I don't have any of those, and I plan to order like 5 of them because there's some in Indianapolis, it looks like, on eBay for like $10. I'll get a couple of those, so then I'll be able to run a solar panel into that, buck down, and then I'll just connect with this. I think that's correct. Yeah, think about it, because I don't want to have a variable input going into, well, I don't know, I have to see, I guess, to the next, would be buck converter. So I have to look and see what the change is like, because the generic one that's already connected to it isn't constant current, constant voltage, or both at least. I don't know, I have to verify. I haven't played with it in like maybe a year or two, probably more like 2 years. So back to 2 years ago, the telescoping Yagi antenna, I print out new parts. I kind of discussed that prior, and I've got all printed, and I'm going to do a little heating to help loosen this up a little bit to get a better fit. And yeah, you have to get those connected here. I still need to take the T's, the half-inch T's, and shave down a little bit of the mold flashing, so there's not that seam, so these will fit better. Otherwise they look like an awesome fit, fits great. I think I have to clean up a little bit of the hot glue also to get that out of the way, because it's kind of messy. Now for these tripod mounts. This is kind of organized with the Vanguard and the Radio Shack and the Slick. And then you take the photo while the other Slick with a zip tie and the recess was printing. And actually, I wound up hooking up one of these. I think this one is connected with that one with one of these little screws that I got for the impedance matching. So I wanted to make sure that little control, any adjustments to change the hairpin, they call it, but I probably design something a little different, unless it is a slider like a hairpin, so I can, basically make notches, color code those notches just like I will with a PVC pipe and the telescopic elements, so it'll be easier to just open to the measured, already pre-tuned length based on whatever frequency you're receiving or hunting. But back to this, I flipped that over, and what I was going to do with this is I've got some other little experiments I was thinking I was going to zip tie. I don't use them anymore, but I can. A little USB Wi-Fi adapter, so I can just zip tie that adapter on, and I can kind of, better point towards where the closest Wi-Fi source is. Anyhow, let's move forward here. There's the zip tied, kind of sloppy here. I'm actually working on this right now, and I figured I'd be a little more resourceful. So instead of printing new elements, because actually I printed another set, and I've got an extra one or two for the solid aluminum. This design so far, it's been working great, is just the aluminum duct tape wrapped around the wooden dowel. So I really probably should dry that out a little bit. And then maybe do some kind of like Krylon coating. I don't know how these will do. Ideally I want to do a little test piece with Krylon paint and then put into the oven for like at 160 to hold to cure. I'm curious to see how the tape will hold up, and that'd be kind of neat to do. I think that'd weatherproof these elements a little better for the generic versions at least. But basically I have to take these apart, clean up the hot glue, and then I'll tighten down the zip tie again. Actually, I was thinking with a handle too, I might run the whole length. I think it'll look slicker. Self-adhering silicone tape. Wound up printing a little wire. I haven't loaded this. Actually, I'm glad I saw this because I forgot to upload this to Thingiverse now that I think about it. I wound up taking some closet-made designs, and I remixed to merge the hook part, the connection part, to this, which was actually a closet-made design also, but for the metal, there's a little bit in the video, or the image, this connection where the shelf mount goes into, I cut that off the back of this, and then I spliced on basically the wire shelf clip part. It actually holds really well. It's actually screwed up, and I have it offset from the center, but it fits like perfect. So I'm like, cool, that'll work. A little better way to organize my cables. I also made a little headphone clip, and this is like one of my earliest first prints where I was still having I was still trying to I'll cut enough for whatever print I'm doing, assuming that's going to be accurate or precise, and I have extra, so I take a lighter and try to splice the two and then roll together where the seam was, and it was really generic. So it didn't turn out well. Amazingly, none of them I had to pull out. I was able to still push through and kind of force through to get past the jams, but I was getting a couple different prints where I had that. I had to go back with the free pink filament that came with the 3D printer pen, the Scribbler version 3. And clean that up a little bit, and you'll see again another image. Oh, there's my reminder print, which was like the worst, where it was jamming too. Anyhow, I wound up printing also this little gauge for the magic numbers for the filament diameters, predetermined by, I think it's Michael O'Brien, noted on Hackaday.io and various videos and references online. And then this is a little tool holder. This, I think, is I forget his name. Is it John Brown? He's the gentleman who did the bed extension and basically X and Y extension for this. Not a Z-axis that I recall, at least. But there's a Z-axis, a height extension out there also. That looks like without having to change any of the rods, where the Y-axis, you have to use longer 8 millimeter diameter stainless steel rods. And with the X-axis, you have to use longer 6 millimeter diameter stainless steel rods. But that's pretty much it. And then the belts, of course. This I just printed today. This is for the SH72. Technically, the lighting's not so good. Actually, it looks really clean. So I'm still tinning and cleaning off real well. But technically, this is my tip that I'm using for my boo-boos, where the design, actually the one I've only had to use one so far for that radom pepper plate that mounts onto the Wuhan or something like that, whatever it's called. 5-volt USB fan. It was a little off, so I had to bring those center points of the two diameters kind of in a little closer. But for what I was already printed, what I had already printed, I'm not going to waste that print, so I just use a soldering iron to move the hole over basically a little bit, kind of. And this extension is the longest of those that are online, the Thingiverse. I didn't modify anything, I just printed it. It's more for the T15, so it seems like there's even a longer one, but this basically extends down the grip, so you have a grip point that's closer to the tip. I figured that'd be handy. I've been wanting to play around with this a little bit too to modify, so basically you have the more versatile range of all the different, TS100, the T13s, the Hacko basically, T13s, which I think is what the SH72 is using, a similar design, the T12s and the T15s, because all those tips will work in the SH72. Okay, this is where kind of back to where the 3D printer pen I'm using here. I had from this kind of quote Philadelphia experiment going back to 2018 when I was working in the Fab Lab. And this is one of those prints that I left I just left, and the guys working there, whatever happened. But I had a bunch of shifting with the disc cone antenna, so those were all pretty bad. And then I had a whole batch where I think I only had one come out. One turned out okay, and all the other ones were just they didn't print. And so I had this extra, kind of I figured I'd save it because I don't like wasting if it looks like I might be able to use as shim stock. Because technically these prints I didn't modify. I just printed, and there's something like they're 1 1/4 inch width. There's something not 1 inch. They're over 1 inch. So I figured I'd use a shim when eventually I'd probably, I wasn't sure. I'd print something to go around and then just glue. I decided to take actually a hair dryer. I used a hair dryer and I formed 4 of these around the pipe, and then I cut, there it is right there, I cut little sections and I filled in to fill in the space, and then I just 3D printer pen to make a continuous piece to go all the way around the 1 inch square aluminum tubing. And then to fill in the void here, because actually the diameter is not the exact same, I had, of course, where I'd use a high temperature hot glue gun. I wound up 3D printer penning to fill in to tighten up that gap there, and I figure I'll probably leave that hot glue gun material there for now, but I have to remove for the other. And what I'm going to probably do on the underside, most likely, is I'll drill a little hole next to, and then just 3D printer pen like a little tab. So it'll be easier if I want to in the future break those off, and maybe if I'm going to do something different. But I think it'd be easier to go that route. I was almost thinking drill through the plastic and then 3D printer pen fill in, but I think I'm going to do it offset, so that'll be easier to maintain in the future. And then currently I am printing for the LCR T4, that little cheap approximately $7 meter. I figured I'd make a little case for it because I don't have a case for it. Currently I just sit it on top of some anti-static, like a hard drive bag, plastic bag, so I just sit it on top of that when I'm using. That's about my 3D print updates, and hopefully I get wrapped up where I'm not going to be using that for a little while once I get some of these prints I want done completed, so I can start working on the electronics projects. So I'm actually getting a little more antsy to work on the webcam spectrometer, I think, for starters, and then also some controls that I want to kind of transition to. I was thinking building a 3D printer to get like a kind of like for like study on CNC controls using like an Arduino or some sort of microcontroller, a STEM microcontroller, STM microcontroller, and maybe even one of the particle microcontrollers also, if I want to have a little more Wi-Fi control instead of a hardwire control, to move forward with that Dobsonian mount tracker for the different dishes I have, that I really want to get that moving forward. Though I'm getting a pulsed headache right now as I'm discussing that. So whatever the invasive nuisance things deciding they're going to go ahead and start assaulting me. Obviously, they probably don't like me working on any of the radio direction finding projects, so I have to do silly, stupid stuff apparently, or I get physically assaulted. I'm sure it's like a sexual assault of them. So hopefully something out there identifies the source of their operations and can lethal force prosecute, literally use deadly force on their operators, and get some real law-abiding, to the U.S. jurisdiction code for within the U.S. jurisdiction, obviously. Um, if even used, maybe the technology is obsolete, doesn't even need to be used. Though I'm thinking whoever is or wherever and whoever is using those systems need to be identified and killed, because there's no way that's anything other than imminent threat operations, where the only thing they do is literally, murder, not, using uh, concealed wireless assault weapons. And I don't see how not malicious intent. I don't see how deadly force is not authorized. So, at least in the state of Michigan, I know the laws. There's 3 laws where those statutes can be applied, so they need to be killed. Especially being this close to a nuclear power plant too. Those operations, hard to believe anything can be left alive that's allowed to do that stuff. Anyways, kind of chill back out, see if I can. The headache they want to give me now, but thankfully I don't get headaches easy, so it's pretty obvious. They don't really persist, but it's weird when they pulses. There's a little residual, but it's not a lot. Okay, back to where I was. I did some TDS and some pH testing of some water before I started with my first little formula. And what I wrote it down. I didn't type it in yet, but basically there's a great value distilled where the water's a municipal from Columbus, Ohio, and that wound up measuring 5 parts per million with a pH that started off at 6.9 and worked its way up to 7.1, 7. Kind of hung out at 7 for about the time I was waiting, maybe a minute or so. 7.1, it might have went up to 7.1, but it stayed put at 7 mainly. A little bit of dancing up to 7.1 though. The next water I tested was Crystal Geyser Natural Spring, and that was from something like south, I guess, or below the Adirondacks in New York. Canajoharie Spring, and that tested 130 ppm with a pH that started off at 6.8 and then worked up to, seemed about stable at 7.4, where kind of stayed put for about a minute. I didn't use a timer, but that kind of was roughly stopping the measurement after about a minute. The next was Myers distilled water with no source other than maybe Grand Rapids. I'm not certain. But that was the only water it tested 0 ppm, and that was about an 8, and it just stayed put at an 8. So it's like, wow, for distilled water, interesting. The next distilled water was the Great Value distilled water, and that source is again the municipal source from Columbus, Ohio. Now that tested higher. Oh, excuse me, that's not the distilled water. That's the purified water. The first one, the first Great Value was distilled. This last one is the purified water, and that was at 9 ppm. Similar to distilled, though. Surprised there's even any total dissolved solids. That was 9 ppm, And that measured started off at 7.9 and went up to 8 and stayed put there. But kind of like I was saying before, the electronics projects, hopefully I don't get pulsed right now, but the MCUs, I really want to, I had those laptop sleds. Actually, the Apple, I forget which Apple they came out of, but those laptop CD, DVD drive, those sleds are very tight tolerance. Those are very solid, sturdy sled, and I want to use that for the slit control, so I can change the slits for basically the collimators, and I think that's what those are, basically a collimator. And then for the diffraction grading, I want to use the MCU also to control the angle, so I can, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to, but for if I use a finer, more lines per inch diffraction grading, so I can sweep basically, or do a oscillating back and forth where the rate's higher than what you're going to visibly observe, so you can get that higher resolution. I think that's going to work in theory, but don't quote me. But that's my goal at least, and that's basically the MCU is going to control the hard drive actuator that's used for the oh, what do you call that? It's not a stylus, but the arm. Maybe it is a stylus. The arm there that goes over the platter, kind of like a record player. I guess that's a needle, a stylus. I think I forget exactly. But yeah, so that's where I guess I'm going to segue into the testing, where I have a gap. I still want to be able to test a little more of the water to see what's present, and there's going to be a lot more than just the controls for the webcam spectrometer. There's going to be some source work I'm going to need to do also. And I mean, I kind of know it's not going to be the best, like using a photomultiplier tube for, like, say an AA, atomic absorption, or other ICP type ductively coupled plasma spectrometer would use a better detector. I'm curious though to see what the performance I can get out of a webcam, especially the 4K webcams, and then maybe other sensors out there that are even better from like scanners, or I don't really know exactly. I probably should inductively, logically put down all the specs from the data sheets, compare and contrast, but for post, gunshot wounds, still being tortured by the remote stuff, whatever the surveillance, remote surveillance, the concealed wireless assault weapons are, I'm just going to take it easy and rehab slowly, not work my way into too technical stuff, but still the sources for that webcam spectrometer will be nice to be able to make, those, like I just mentioned, the ICP source, maybe even a laser induced breakdown, libs type source. And of course, flame. I don't know. It seems why flame when I can just use a plasma. So I don't know. We'll see. But the formula I wound up for the water making, and it's very strange until I thought about it. These must be hydrated. So 0.4 grams, 400 milligrams, and 1.4 grams combined, to make 3.87 liters. That is almost 4 liters though, but only a 184 ppm solution. So I mean, if we take an add, we'll have 1.8, divide that by 4, and that doesn't, it's like not even, it's a little over half, but it should be more like 300 ppm. But I'm guessing that these might have been hydrated more, so they're not dried. I didn't dry these either. So, but this is a formula I decided I'd start off with instead of messing with the eggshells and the calcium ascorbate, or the eggshell ascorbate mixture I'm working on right now. Or using the calcium carbonate, because I was reading into those, and I don't have a C of A for, and I was reading some of the sources are higher in cadmium, so I decided not to, and I don't think I really need the calcium so much. I need more of the magnesium, and I need more of the potassium, so I figured this would be the good little formula to start off with. And I was looking at ratios, so I added another column in here with the USDA RDA values based on my spec. And these can be found basically the professional USDA RDA. I forget exactly what it's called, source. It's right here. There's the link, the DRI calculator. And I made another column that's basically the ratio, and you can see here the equation. So like 1,000 divided by what's the mature human milk, the amount divided by the concentration, just to see a ratio of what the values kind of are. So it's like, there's 3.5 times less, than the daily value in, that amount right there. So a liter basically. So it's kind of curious to see just what this data for this sample set is. There's a range of mature human milk sources of data from different sample sets. And then, you have colostrum, you have first and second pumps too. So those values are going to be different also. Yeah, so moving forward with that, and what do I have here? It's good to know. Oh yeah, a little list here. In regards to food, I figured I'd do a little, also kind of like a flush. I like sometimes doing it. I don't really do it like annually. There's a period when I was more religiously attending Central Wesleyan Church. I would do more of a annual fasting, and of course a liquid. I still had liquid intake, and for nutrients also. I didn't just stop eating, or intake. I stopped eating basically, but I didn't stop my intake of nutrients that I need. Kind of, these are just minerals. Keep in mind, you need vitamins. You still need proteins. You still need carbs. You still need fats, but you don't really need probably much of the carbs. Back then I didn't have that low carb, no carb mindset, so the diet wasn't those times weren't the best actually. But really, when I was going to church, I didn't notice any issues there, other than looking back, maybe eating out could have been laced, I guess, and then elant issues, or not. I shouldn't say elant, but whatever it is, the uh, remote sensing surveillance. It's not really surveillance. They're literally imminent threats because they have some sort of concealed wireless assault weapon. And they do maliciously destroy not only personality with their psychological operations, they'll destroy, obviously property, because the mental facilities are seriously bodily harmed and not able to maintain themselves or their own property. And this invasive nuisance, whatever it is with those assault weapons, further, injure, maim. And obviously, they murder and mass murder, and there's no justifiable way I can see where, at least in my situation and others that I observed probably are victims, I can't see where there was substantiation to support their efforts legally and validly, lawfully, and those things need to be killed. So that's all there. But back to the diet, I did a little flush. I had about 2 cups of prunes. Ate those, had some miso soup with some salads. I'm still actually on that right now. I'm not doing my typical keto meat intake. I figured I'd do, so I had a little kind of hive flare up again, and I wanted to calm that down, and figured, well, let's just go ahead and I'll do like um, a raw vegan diet. It's not really true vegan, because I'll tell you, when I get down into these ingredients, I kind of cheated a little bit. It's veg, I think, unless you call it lacto vegan. Maybe it's lacto vegan. I don't know. But I did a green and red leaf lettuce. Also some remains. I had like maybe 2 salads last few days. 3 days. I've had 2 salads each day. And that first day, again, I just went ahead and had 2 cups of prunes. And I think I'm, starting to now, day 3, starting to bind back up. But, man, this first few days, boy, cleaned out. I was like actually surprised how well, it makes sense having a day or two. It's not like urination where your water flows through rather quickly. Your GI tract, it might take more than a day to, obviously, to flush that out completely. But on top of the green leaf and red leaf lettuce and the romaine, that, other than the stems, I just took the leaves and peeled them off and chopped those up. Um, with the greens and everything else, I actually Cuisinarted. So I'd use collard greens, few leaves, and then the stems, first. The bigger chunks I'd Cuisinart first. So mustard greens, collard greens, some red and green cabbage, and dill and watercress. And then flavoring, I added a little garlic in there too. Um, and I made kind of like cucumber sauce. I forget what they call it, like a tzatziki sauce. And I should know, but I'm only like genetically, I guess 6% Greek. This wasn't. I'm in the United States of America, man. It's been it's colonial history. It goes back, so I am not Greek, but Greek descent there though. It's a great sauce. They have some great food too. But I made that kind of sauce with cucumbers, some lime juice, some garlic, and instead of yogurt, I used sour cream, and of course the Daisy sour cream. 'Cause I think all the other kind of like yogurt, man, everything is junk more than I didn't even want to imagine. But it's one of those things. Mom's been high end since I can remember going shopping with her. How they change the ingredients of her favorite stuff, and in general to make junky. Not she wouldn't say junky. She just say change the ingredients, but I find it to be it being the ingredients are junk. So I made that little sauce, and I also added some oil. I used just coconut oil and a little bit of corn oil. So heart healthy, you want to use a good high quality corn oil too. I haven't been using olive oil lately just because of the budget, and this is where I kind of cheated also with the sour cream. Um, I use mayo too, so I guess is that lacto or is that the eggs, man? That might not even be lacto. I use a little mayo, and I had two mayos. I still have a little bit left. This Primal Kitchen real mayo with avocado oil. That was the first one I found that looks like, again, how the sour cream and how the yogurt is just complete, not really natural. There's a lot of added junk in there. It's just not real food really. It's more processed junk. But I found a new mayo. It's Sir Kensington's, and it seems like a good. The ingredients look like they're correct. That looks more like real mayo to me. So it seems like a good one. But I put a little bit in there, so I might have screwed up my salad if you're like a purist raw, but still seems raw to me, and it seems more keto-y like. So um, this last salad I did, though, actually the last one I did, excuse me, two salads ago, last night, I did one with pecans. So I basically Cuisinarted the pecans to almost butter consistency. I'd make like, I call it pemmican, it's not really, but I'd call it like my Cuisinart pemmican where I do like dried cranberries or raisins I do figs too with like pecans or walnuts. Basically nuts I'm not allergic to, but usually those two. Like cashews and pistachios, I think I'm allergic to after a certain dose, or I know I am after a certain dose. Um, I didn't notice that until I had that too much of a dose. But I did that kind of interesting with the pecans. I did pecans and salt, and then I did garlic, and then I added the uh, what was that next? Oh, the collard greens, the mustard green stems, a little bit of the leaf stems. I didn't do any cabbage with it, and that made an interesting coating. It like took that and kind of sauced up everything. So it was like I already had like a yogurt, or I don't know, kind of like a butter. I don't know. So it wasn't butter. It was really more yogurty like. So that was kind of an interesting salad where I was debating not using sour cream or mayo. I still wanted to put in little less in. And I still use oil, of course, but that's kind of neat. Today, though, my last one, I just added black beans and avocado. I figured I'd get some proteins in there. So I did um, coochie. What did I say? I just said coochie. Um, coo- Forget. It's like a no sodium um, black beans. So I use about a third of the can for that. And I just used half a Hass avocado. And that's my little salad thing. So I figured I'd do like kind of a raw-ish like, stick till get to the Well, black beans aren't necessarily raw. Those should be probably pressure cooked and processed and canned. Um, Salad, uh, thing for, I don't know, I might pull it off for a week. I'm debating, see how I feel, but I definitely dropped weight. So, I was hovering around 191. And again, I had some eczema. I had used the first, I kind of thought about it. Like, I knew I had peppers and tomatoes. I bought a bag of tomatoes, and I used those last week. And I also had peppers. I wonder if that combo got the eczema flaring up. But it might have been dust mites because I had it on my hand a little bit, but it spread to like my inner legs, my inner thighs. So where that's kind of a moisture area. So I kind of get paranoid. I'm like, man, is that fungus or what the is that? But little Flonase, squirt Flonase on it once, and basically, boom, it's gone. Or it's not gone. It's not spreading. It's not itchy, and it's going away. And basically, prior to that, just to dry off, I use a little isopropyl alcohol, and if there's other things out there you could use too if you're like paranoid, and like zinc oxide, Desitin ointment for babies. That works. I think they have a 40%, and then I want to say 20 or 15% also if you need. But it was one of those things where I was like, I actually tried that and it wasn't doing anything. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's not funky then. So maybe it's just the diet. And yeah, it wound up being after I said, well, I'll do the anti-inflammatory last. So I use a Flonase, and yeah, that got rid of it. So, but I decided the last 2 days, I happened to run out, so I didn't. And I thought that before, don't get any more tomatoes when I was out shopping, and I didn't. So I'm basically going to take the tomato back out of the diet. I made a comment online in one of the groups for actually two groups, but the hypohidrotic ectodermal dysplasia group, I got a reply back, and it's neat to see some of the feedback where they're the same way with like the nightshade family. Uh, take those out of the diet, and then some other similar low carb or no carb type comments with specific carb sources they're not using, and yeah, healing back up, I guess, and then losing weight too, which is nice. So measuring in down to 184, and after I didn't measure when I first woke up this morning, I wanted getting rehydrated, after I brushed my teeth, and then I was like, oh, I forgot to weigh myself, and um, actually, it's another electronics project I was thinking about doing too, is tapping into that value and then data logging that so I can have a graph. I don't really want to do IoT projects. I'd rather hardwire because I just don't need the wireless signals. I think that's insane having all the wireless infrastructure, just not required. But I think I don't mind running a wire and hardwiring to have like a spreadsheet that updates, or a data text file, some kind of file update, so I have that where I can pull up that data when I open up a application or a file like a spreadsheet, and basically track trend my metric there, the weight metric. um, yeah, that might be a fun project. And same with the water. It might be kind of cool to do the same thing with a pH meter and a TDS meter. Have those wired up where I can stream that data and data log. But I did recently just receive a few days ago too, data logger module for an Arduino. So it's kind of neat. But speaking of that line of stuff with those, there's a little micro SD card. I yesterday received the adapter for the SD micro card to regular SD standard card that I was thinking I'd buy instead of buying a new like 2 gigabyte or less SD micro card. That's the standard format, the older version. That I've been reading that's usually what seems to work with the Monoprice Select Mini 3D printers. I said, well, maybe I'm going to do an adapter, because I was reading somewhere saying the adapters work pretty good. Plus, that'd be more versatile. And if the card reader was at fault and it's not working, then I'll have an adapter that maybe I can use, or maybe I return. But I think I'm just going to keep it and see about using, like I was thinking for the data logger, and that was kind of the justification to get that. So that little data logger, at least for prototyping, I can use larger SD card formats that I already have, because I'm not going to have more. Like, I've got a 512 megabyte card. Why do I need to buy more cards if I don't need more cards? So why not have an adapter? I always like the adapters. I'm not doing the computer service, but if anybody does need where there's some reason I can use, they can use, then that'll be something that I can use. Um, so that's about it. I'm thinking I just wanted to do a little vlog update with those topics. The water, the diet, and the 3D prints. And I don't think there's anything else to comment for now. I commented on the detection equipment. Let's see if I got a pulse. But I don't feel like it right now. But the Yagi for that approximate 450 megahertz antenna, get that going again on the tripod with a little more controlled testing capabilities. Technically, I want to put I think I'll mount like a protractor, something to measure a little more. So when I've got the tripod leveled, when I'm actually taking measurements, I can have more of a reference to where I'm at and where I find if, say, a satellite's a source or a tower's a source. I can get a little more, triangulation going with the results, and see. I'll try to videotape if I do get to that. Hopefully I do. And then the Dobsonian mount will be the same way. And there's a neat little method to use also that seems kind of cool. I'll have to keep my eyes peeled at the surplus stores for the old-fashioned outdoor CCTV cameras, the point and tilt mounts. I assume they're point and tilt zoom cameras, or the cameras were zoom. But the point and tilt mounts, there's some older heavy-duty ones that look impressive that'll take a load. And I do see there's some $50 or less ones that'll take 500 grams. So somewhere between 250 to 500 grams, but they're like going to be, ordered from China. So I'm not really going to focus on those, but that's something to keep in mind also for myself in the future watching this, or if anybody else happens to take a look, and want to subscribe, smash that like button, and feel free to comment down below if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions. Other than that, I think I'm just going to call it halfway through the day and get back to whatever I'm working on. Take care and have a good one.